I'm 32 years old, and I live in a two-bedroom apartment on the edge of the Plateau Mont Royal in Montreal. Not the trendy part, the part where the convenience store on the corner still has a handwritten sign in the window, and the upstairs neighbor shovels his balcony at 11 at night in January. I've lived here for 4 years. I've had the same job for 6. And for most of that time, the first person I called whenever anything happened, good, bad, confusing, funny, terrible, was Renata Ostrowski. I'm not sure how to explain Renata to someone who's never had a friendship like that. She was my emergency contact. She was the person who drove me to the ER at 2 in the morning when I thought I was having a heart attack and turned out to just be having my first panic attack. She was the one who sat with me in the waiting room and said nothing for 45 minutes. And then, when the nurse finally told us it wasn't cardiac, turned to me and said, "Okay, so you're not dying. You want a poutine?" She knew the exact right thing to say in every situation, which is rare. I don't think most people realize how rare it is. We met at a mutual friend's birthday thing in 2018, one of those Airbnb chalet weekends in the Laurentians that someone always organizes in early March, when everyone is so desperate for winter to be over that they convince themselves skiing will fix it. I don't ski. She doesn't ski either. We spent most of that weekend sitting by the fire, arguing about whether the second season of a show we both hated was worse than the first season or worse in a different and more interesting way. By Sunday morning, we'd exchanged numbers. By the following weekend, we'd had our first proper dinner, just the two of us, at a Vietnamese place on Saint Denis that neither of us goes to anymore because they changed the menu. That was 5.5 years ago. She was a project coordinator at a civil engineering firm downtown. I was, still am, a technical writer for a software company that makes inventory management tools. I know, it's not glamorous. But the hours are decent, and I can work from home 3 days a week, which meant that for most of our friendship, Renata and I had lunch together on Tuesdays and Thursdays, sometimes more. Her office was an 8-minute walk from my building. We had a Thai place, a ramen place, a bakery that made the best miche in the city, and a mediocre sushi spot that we kept going back to despite everything, because it was right between us and the booths were comfortable. People assumed we were together, all the time. It was so constant that it stopped being funny. Her mother asked her about it every Christmas. My coworker Patrick asked me once, genuinely baffled, "So she's just your friend?" Like the concept required some kind of documentation. We laughed about it. We made a kind of joke out of it. "No, just friends. Yes, I know. Yes, I'm aware. No, I don't see it that way." It became part of the script. I told myself I believed the script. She'd been in a relationship for about 2 years before it ended. A guy named Pascal, perfectly fine, worked in finance. They broke up in the fall of 2022, and she was sad about it in a quiet, self-contained way that she didn't want to talk about directly. So we didn't talk about it directly. We watched 3 seasons of a British baking show instead, and I brought over good wine, and she let me sit with her without having to explain herself. That's the thing about Renata. She never needed you to perform sympathy. She just needed you to show up. After Pascal, I was careful. I noticed I was careful, and I didn't examine why. I'd had my own thing in the spring of 2023, Priya, who I met through an app and dated for about 4 months. Renata was polite about Priya in the way that she was polite about things she had thoughts about but had chosen not to share. She asked normal questions. She never asked a second time. When Priya and I ended, Renata said, "I'm sorry, that's rough," and then she asked if I wanted to come over for dinner on Friday. I said yes. She made shakshuka and opened a bottle of something Quebecois, and we stayed up until 1 in the morning the way we always did. I didn't think anything of it at the time. That's what I keep coming back to. The night everything changed was a Thursday in late February. It was one of those Montreal nights that feels like the city is actively trying to break you. -22. Wind chill, taking it down to something that made the inside of your nose sting the second you stepped outside. I'd been on a video call with Renata earlier that evening. We did this maybe twice a week, not for any particular reason, just to decompress, the same way some people call their siblings. I was on my laptop at my kitchen table. She was on her couch. We talked about a renovation project her firm had been struggling with, about a weird interaction I'd had with my landlord, about whether we wanted to try a new Peruvian place in Mile End that a friend of hers had recommended. Normal. Comfortable. Around 9:30, she said she had to go. She was expecting a call from her sister out in Vancouver. We said goodbye. I closed my laptop, except I didn't close the call. I realized this about 3 minutes later when I looked up from my phone and saw that the video window was still open on my screen, minimized but running. I was about to click out of it, and then I heard her voice. She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to someone else. I assumed her sister, though I couldn't hear the other end. I should have closed it immediately. I know that. I've thought about it many times since. But her tone stopped me. She sounded different, not upset, just unguarded in a way she wasn't when she knew I was listening. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this, she said. I went completely still. It's fine. He doesn't know. He's never going to figure it out on his own. You know what he's like. A pause. I could hear her shifting on the couch. I've been in love with him for 2 years, Danielle. At least 2 years. Maybe more. And I keep thinking, at some point it has to get easier or it has to become obvious to him, but it just doesn't. It doesn't change. He calls me after every single bad date to tell me about it, and I sit there and I listen, and I think, I'm right here, I'm literally right here, and he can't see it. I didn't breathe. I don't think I was capable of breathing. I know, she said, quieter. I know I should just tell him. I've been saying that for a year. Another pause. I'm scared, Danielle. What if it ruins it? We have something, what we have is real, and I don't want to be the one who breaks it because I couldn't just keep my mouth shut. I closed the laptop. I sat at my kitchen table in the dark for a long time. My first thought, and I'm not proud of this, was denial. Systematic, almost clinical denial. I ran through the list. She must be talking about someone else. She was clearly talking about someone else. She had other male friends. There was a guy at her office she'd mentioned once or twice. It didn't have to be me. I grabbed onto that interpretation the way you grab a railing on icy steps. I held it for maybe 4 minutes. Then I thought about the way she looked at me sometimes when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I thought about the time she drove 40 minutes in a snowstorm to help me move a couch I'd bought off Marketplace because I'd underestimated the weight. I thought about the birthday card she gave me last October that I'd read 3 times because it said things I hadn't known how to respond to. I thought about the way she always remembered the small things, the name of my dentist, which coffee order I switched to in winter, the fact that I couldn't eat cilantro without tasting soap. I thought about how she'd sat next to me at my grandmother's funeral and held my hand without saying a word. I thought, how did I not know this? And then underneath that, another thought, quieter and more frightening. Did I know? Was there some part of me that always knew and just kept choosing not to look at it directly? I didn't sleep much that night. I didn't call her the next day either, or the day after. I told myself I needed to think. I was thinking, technically. I was thinking constantly, in the way that isn't useful, the circular, exhausting kind that doesn't move forward, just loops. I kept rehearsing conversations in my head that never got past the first line. I kept getting stuck on the same question. What do I actually feel? Because here's the thing no one tells you about being best friends with someone for 5 years. You stop separating out what you feel for them as a person from what you feel for them as a fixture in your life. They become the same thing. When I imagined my week without Renata in it, I felt something close to panic. But was that love, or was that just dependency? Was that romance, or was that the way you feel about anyone who has become genuinely load-bearing in your life? I called my brother Callum in Ottawa. He's 3 years older than me, and he has the useful quality of telling me things I don't want to hear without making it feel like an attack. How long have you been thinking about her this way? He asked. I don't know that I have been, I said. Then what are you actually asking me? I thought about it. I think I'm asking whether it's possible to not know. He was quiet for a second. You drove 6 hours to help her move apartments in a July heat wave, he said. You turned down that contract in Calgary because it would have meant being away for 3 months. He paused. You brought her to mom and dad's for Thanksgiving 2 years in a row. I didn't say anything. I'm not telling you what to feel, he said, but I think you've known for a while, and you've been really committed to not knowing. After that, I stopped pretending the question was unclear. What I felt when I finally let myself feel it without immediately analyzing it was this. The thought of Renata being in love with someone else, anyone else, made my chest tighten. The thought of her deciding to stop calling, to stop being the first person I thought of, to stop being available to me in all the ways she was. I couldn't look at that directly. It was too much. But I didn't know how to get from that to a conversation. I'd been friends with this woman for 5.5 years. I'd heard her, by accident, confess to her sister that she was afraid to say something because she didn't want to break what we had. And here I was, 4 days later, also unable to say something for the same reason. We were both just standing on either side of a door, not turning the handle. On the 5th day, she texted me. Just, hey, haven't heard from you in a few days. You okay? I stared at it for 20 minutes. I typed and deleted several responses that were too much or not enough. I finally sent, yeah, sorry. Been a weird week. Can I come by tonight? She said yes. I took the metro to her stop on the Orange Line. It was early March by then, one of those evenings where the temperature had crept up just enough to make the snow soft, and the air smelled briefly like something other than cold. I walked from the station to her building on Delormier with my hands in my pockets and my heart doing something irregular and unhelpful. She buzzed me up. She had music on low, something I didn't recognize, ambient and quiet. There was tea already made. She had this thing about always having tea ready when someone came over, like it was the minimum requirement of hospitality. She was standing by the counter when I came in, and she smiled at me, the normal smile, the one I'd seen 1,000 times, and I felt the thing in my chest again. You look tired, she said. I didn't sleep great this week. Sit down. I made chamomile. I sat. I wrapped my hands around the mug. She sat across from me on the other end of the couch, legs crossed, and looked at me with that particular look she had. Patient, attentive, not pushing. Waiting. I have to tell you something, I said. Okay. I didn't. I need to preface this by saying I didn't do it on purpose. I made myself look at her. The other night, when we were on the call and you said goodbye, I thought I closed the video, but I didn't. Not immediately. The expression on her face changed, not dramatically. A kind of stillness. How long? She said. Long enough. She set her mug down on the coffee table. She looked at her hands. The music was still playing, soft and low, something with a piano in it. Renata, I said, I want to be honest with you, and I want you to know that whatever happens here, the thing I'm most scared of is the same thing you said to your sister. What we have is real. I know that, and I should have. I think I've been doing something that isn't fair to either of us, which is that I've been choosing not to see something that was probably right in front of me. She looked up. I drove 6 hours to help you move in July, I said. I turned down work to stay in the city. I think about you first. I have always thought about you first. My voice was steadier than I expected. And I don't think that's just friendship. I think I've been telling myself it's just friendship because it felt safer than whatever the other thing was. She was very quiet for a moment. You're not just saying this because you heard what I said. No, I said. If anything, what I heard scared me into admitting something I'd been avoiding. How long have you been avoiding it? Honestly. Probably since you sat next to me at my grandmother's funeral and I didn't want to let go of your hand. She looked at me for a long time. The piano kept playing. Outside, I could hear the soft sound of the city in early spring. Traffic, someone's dog, a streetcar somewhere on Papineau. You should have said something, she said quietly. Not angry. Something more complicated. I know, so should you. Something in her expression shifted, maybe the beginning of a smile. We're both idiots. Significant idiots, yes. She picked her mug back up. She looked down at it for a moment. When she looked up again, her eyes were bright in a way that wasn't quite crying. I'm scared, she said. I meant what I told Danielle. I don't want to lose what we have. We're not losing it, I said. We're finding out what it actually is. She reached over and set her mug back down, and then she left her hand on the cushion between us and I took it. We sat there for a long time before either of us said anything else. There was nothing that needed to be said immediately. Everything that had been unsaid for years was already in the room with us. It was like something had settled. The particular stillness after a long cold season, when you can finally, after months, feel the air begin to turn. Her sister Danielle called at 9:30. Renata let it ring twice, looked at me, and silenced it. I'll call her back later, she said. She's going to want to know everything. She's going to be unbearable about this. Completely insufferable, I agreed. She laughed. A real laugh, the one I'd heard thousands of times, and I thought, there it is. That's the one. That's the sound I've been organizing my whole week around, without letting myself know that's what I was doing. 3 weeks later, her mother called to ask when they were finally going to meet me. Renata told her she'd been asking the wrong question for about 2 years.